Now, Cowboys, Bears, Thursday Night Football. This is not the final exam, but this is the exam before the final exam. Do you remember the drop ad date in college? Who remembers that? When I was in college, the class that I struggled the most with at Oklahoma State was statistics. Now, it wasn't that the class was that hard. It wasn't that the class was that hard. It was more. It was more that you had to keep up daily with the work. You know, that everything was it went from A to B to C to D to E to F to all the way to Z. And if you kept up with the work, you could apply the formulas. I think Deborah Masters was my teacher. I believe that's her name. If you went to Oklahoma State, you'll remember. You can feel free to tweet me at GOTTLIEB Show. And the first test, you know, it incorporates some of the things you already knew, some of the things you had learned. I took the class the first semester of my junior year. Keep in mind, I transferred to Oklahoma State as a sophomore. I didn't sit out. So when I sat out at a junior college the year before. So when I got there, I went from somebody no one knew or recognized to a basketball star in a small pond, big fish in a small pond. Now, I'm okay with the fact I wasn't close to the best player on any of my teams, but I was, there's 5 guys to start. I was one of them. And everyone knew who I was. So first semester of junior year, by then, it's kind of a dude. And a couple of my teammates who were younger were in the same class. A couple of my buddies were in the same class. It was a big lecture hall of about 400 or 500 people. And so we'd sit back there, and this is back in the day of flipping a note to a girl, talking with your dudes. And I had a teammate named Mike Johnson, straight A student, couldn't remember a play, but couldn't forget an assignment. Unbelievable in the classroom, just couldn't remember basketball plays. And Mike kind of helped us along early on, and maybe helped us along during test day. But once you get to that third test, where the day you receive your grades is the drop ad date, you got to make a decision, right? Are you in this thing for the long haul, or are you going to drop it only to have to redo it again at some other point? And I remember walking into that third test, and I looked at the sheet. I thought to myself, what language is this written in? Because I had been, copying homework, borrowing answers on quizzes and tests. All the different little things that dudes do when they're not keeping up with the work on a daily basis. And she wouldn't have known because I don't even think she graded the homework. You just simply had to turn it in. The grades were based upon the tests. But you can't fake it once you get to the third test. First test was like a B. Second test was like a C. Third test, it might as well have been written in hieroglyphics. I had no idea what it said. I tried to fill out some of the answers. I walked up, turned the test in. The next day, I went to my counselor and I said, I got to drop statistics. Now, one of the crowning achievements of my college academic career was the next year when I had no friends in the class. I got through, I think I got like a B in the class, but I did it on my own. I went and did office hours. I really felt like I achieved something. My point on the drop ad date is that's where we seem to be tonight on Thursday Night Football. Right, the Bears lose and Mitch Trubisky doesn't play well. Suddenly now, they're very much in the market for a quarterback. I know what we all think is that, hey, they're pot committed to this quarterback. They're pot committed to this quarterback because, well, they traded up to get the number 2 pick. But they feel like they have an elite level defense. They feel like they're close. The Lions aren't close. Most people don't believe in Kirk Cousins against an elite level defense. And yeah, Aaron Rodgers is incredible. But do we really fear the Packers defense or the rest of their team? The answer is no. Ryan Pace knows you got to win. They won last year, not winning this year. And if Mitch Trubisky's not the guy, you don't re-up him. You get rid of him. You move on. That's the beauty to these rookie contracts. You're not committed to $50 million the way you were with Sam Bradford and the Rams, right? It stands to reason if this is a poor performance against the Dallas Cowboys that they will mentally move on. And they should. There's options out there. Potentially Jameis Winston, Cam Newton, Marcus Mariota, right? Like Marcus Mariota in that system where you have to be athletic, you have to move, a lot of dink and dunk passing, but you have to be smart. Like Marcus Mariota is a great reclamation project. As well as the upcoming NFL draft, which is loaded with quarterbacks outside of Tua, who's a project because we don't know how he comes back from hip surgery. If the Bears lose or Mitch Trubisky plays poorly, even maybe in a squeak-out win, and I still think the Bears might get, but if you win, sometimes you convince yourself you can get by. That's what they did last year. But let's say he plays poorly again, the Bears have options. And the thing about options is what Chris Rock likes to say.
Man is basically as faithful as his options.
Right? Man is basically as faithful as his options. I mean, look, Jerry Jones earlier this week said, in my opinion, Jason Garrett will be coaching in the NFL next year. Right? That's what he said. He did not say he'll be coaching the Dallas Cowboys next year. He said in the NFL next year. Everyone knows the pressure is on the Cowboys, and to this point, they've beaten all of the non-playoff teams. And I don't know how you look at the standings, but from my eye, the Bears are a non-playoff team. If we go from you can't beat playoff teams to you can't beat non-playoff teams with quarterbacks who people don't believe in, now what with Jason Garrett? Right? Like the only teams they've beaten are the bad teams, and specifically the teams in their division. You can't beat the Bears? How good are you actually? And then you look at the options that are sitting there for Jerry Jones. Urban Meyer. Right? Maybe Lincoln Riley. Heck, a guy who's been to a Super Bowl recently just got fired from the Carolina Panthers. Didn't he? And he coached a quarterback who's a lot like Dak. SEC, runner. They won based upon their run game, their defense, and their quarterback was the MVP that year. You don't think Ron Rivera would be a great sale for Jerry Jones to replace like basically his other son who's been the head coach? Jerry Jones knows he has options, and those options become much more readily available, much easier to go to if you lose tonight. If you lose tonight, you fail this test, this is drop ad day. You're like, man, we're out. Or win. You get an A or a B, you stick with it. Fine, you just get through it. Whatever, C's for degrees. You get a D or an F, drop that sucker. Just drop it, redo it next year. That's where we are tonight with Thursday Night Football. It's a really important game. It's played outdoors, it's played in Soldier Field, and there's the guys on Fox do a great job. It'll be cold, it'll feel like football, but more than anything, just look at it like you looked at that third test. Not the final, but the test that made you decide whether or not you stuck with the class. Because if you lose, now all of a sudden you got to figure out your options. And there's plenty of options at quarterback this offseason. Phillip Rivers could be available. Not under contract next year. Tom Brady could be available. Again, that doesn't mean you're going to get Tom Brady in Chicago or get Phillip Rivers, but if they move, somebody else becomes readily available. That's the way it works. Man is basically as faithful as his options, and both of these teams have options, and they will mark it down, explore those options, whoever loses tonight. That's Thursday Night Football in a nutshell. Hi, I'm Doug Gottlieb from Fox Sports Radio, and you need to subscribe to the Fox Sports Radio YouTube channel where you can hear and see me. Why not? Plus, everybody else who's awesome here on Fox Sports Radio.